In this lesson, we're going to learn how to multiply a binomial times a trinomial and a trinomial times a trinomial. And it's really no different than what we did when we did binomials, which was the last lesson. In that lesson, we used that word FOIL. And if we take a look at what we would have done in the last lesson, it'd be something like x plus 2 times 2x minus 7. And all we did was distribute twice, right? And we use that acronym FOIL. So we take x times 2x, then we take x times the negative 7, then we take 2 times 2x, and then 2 times negative 7. And then we combine our like terms. So really all you did was distribute everything in the first parenthesis, the x and the positive 2, to everything in the second parenthesis. But again, binomials get that special word FOIL, but really all we're doing is distributing. And so if we think of that today, that all we're really doing is distributing, and we want to make sure that we distribute everything in the first parenthesis to everything in the second, then these problems really don't feel any different than the last section. The problem is that they get kind of long. So if we look down at example 1, I have the same problem written twice, and I'm going to show you how to do it working horizontally, and then I'm going to show you how to do it working vertically. It's the same problem though. All right. So the thing to remember is there's nothing in between the two parentheses, right? If you look in between the two parentheses, there's no symbol there. So we know we're multiplying, right? And same, same with that other example. That's really the same problem. We're multiplying, okay? Also, the problem says find each product. Product means we're multiplying. So what we want to do, if we're working horizontally, let's talk about this. We're going to distribute the x 3 times. We're going to distribute it to the 3x squared. We're going to distribute it to the positive x, and we're going to distribute it to the minus 7. Then we're going to distribute the 2. The positive 2 is going to get distributed to the 3x squared, to the positive x, and to the minus 7. And so if you count up how many arrows that is, it's 6 arrows, right? You're going to distribute the x 3 times and the positive 2 3 times. So if you think about it, we're going to write all of these things right next to each other horizontally. We're going to have 6 things written in a row. So if we do that first arrow, the x times the 3x squared. So we're going to do x times 3x squared plus, we're going to do x times the x plus, we're going to do the x times the negative 7. That would be those first 3 arrows that are coming out of the x. If we do the next 3 arrows, and I'm kind of writing big, so let me make this a little smaller. If we do the next 3 arrows that are coming out of the 2, we're going to do the 2 times 3x squared, plus we're going to do the 2 times x, plus we're going to do the 2 times the negative 7. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 multiplications I'm doing. 3 of them coming from the x and 3 of them coming from the positive 2, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I multiply 3x squared times our x, don't forget about the invisible 1. We add up those exponents and get 3x to the third. If I multiply x times x, again, don't forget about those invisible 1s, we get x squared. If I multiply x times negative 7, we get negative 7x. If I multiply 2 times 3x squared, I get a positive 6x squared. If I multiply a 2 times the x, that 5th multiplication that I'm doing, I just get 2x. And the 6th multiplication that I'm doing is just 2 times negative 7, which is negative 14. Remember that I don't expect you to write, let me star this in red, I don't really expect you to write this step that I'm starring in red. You don't have to. A lot of you will do that mentally, and that would actually be better if you did it mentally. All right, but if you need to write it, it's fine also. All right, so now it's all about combining like terms. So we're going to be looking for those like terms. And sometimes when it gets really long, I tell people to cross them off as they go. Some of you maybe like that shape coding thing we do sometimes. Some of you maybe don't. So I'm going to continue to shape code. I see that there is an x squared, and don't forget there's an invisible 1 in front of that. And there is a 6x squared that need to be combined. There is a minus 7x and a positive 2x. And that's really it. So the 3x to the third There are no like terms, so we'll just leave it alone. The positive 1 and the negative 7 add to negative 6, and then we leave our x squared term alone. Remember, when you're combining like terms, variables, exponents do not change. Oops, I combined the wrong thing. Just noticed what I did there. I'm supposed to be combining my circles. So the positive 1x squared and the positive 6x squared will add to a positive 7x squared. There we go. And then the negative 7x and the positive 2x will add to a negative 5x. I'm adding up the ones that are in the boxes. And the minus 14 don't get added up to anything. So again, as you write them and you combine them, maybe you would have wanted to cross them off as you go so that you know you got them all. That could be helpful. So the final answer is 3x to the third plus 7x squared minus 5x minus 14. And remember, we're always writing in standard form. That means that exponents are going down. They went from a 3 to a 2 to an invisible 1 to no exponent at all, which would have been a 0. All right, so that's if we worked horizontally. And you can see it kind of takes up a lot of space. I'm almost bumping into the vertical problem there. So I just like to show students how to work vertically instead. So let me put a little line here. Working vertically means each time you move to the next term in the parentheses, you go down a level. Instead of working horizontally, you're going to move down. So what I mean by that is, first we're going to distribute the x, and we're going to write that all horizontally. Let's do that first. So x times our 3x squared, and I'm going to skip that middle step that I started in red. Let's just do this mentally. X times 3x squared gives me 3x to the third. X times x gives me x squared, so plus x squared. And then x times minus 7 gives me minus 7x. So that distribution is going to be written all in a row. But now you're moving over to the 2. So you're going to go down a line, and you're going to line up like terms right under each other. So the first thing we're going to do is distribute the 2 to the 3x squared. 2 times 3x squared gives me 6x squared, and I'm going to line that under the other squared term. 2 times a positive x gives me plus 2x. And then 2 times negative 7 gives me minus 14. If you're working vertically, then we're going to draw a line, and we're going to add up the columns. 3x squared, 3x to the third, but nothing underneath it means it stays 3x to the third. In the next column, I have that invisible 1x squared plus the 6x squared. That gives me the 7x squared. In the next column, I have a negative 7x and a positive 2x. If I add that up, I get negative 5x. And then that negative 14 that's dangling there on the end, there's nothing above it, so there are no other like terms, so we'll have minus 14. So that's how it looks if you work vertically. You get the same answer, but you line your like terms underneath each other. So the first distribution is on the first line, the second distribution is on the second line. Now, most students seem to like working horizontally better, although I really think vertically is kind of nice. So it's up to you. I wouldn't make you do it one way or the other. It's your choice. However, when we move to the next problems, the trinomial times a trinomial, some of you might see how nice that vertical is, right? The vertical is going to actually take up a lot less space, and it's going to be really easy to spot those like terms. That's why I kind of like the vertical method. But we're going to do the trinomial times a trinomial both ways again, all right? So it's still the same thing. Like I said, in section 5.4, we were doing binomial times binomial. We were just distributing twice. With trinomials, you're distributing 3 times, okay? So what I have written here is this distribute everything in first parentheses to everything in second. That is always the rule. That's always the rule when you're multiplying, okay? It's not just the rule in this section. It's the rule for multiplication. All right, so if in example 2, we're going to work horizontally, and again, notice example 2 has the same 2 problems, or the same problem twice, okay? So I'm not doing 2 different problems. I'm doing the same problem 2 different ways. So if we're working horizontally, think about what's going to happen. We're going to distribute the 6x squared 3 times, we're going to distribute the negative 3x 3 times, and we're going to have to distribute, I think I'm going to get a different color just so we can see it. We're also going to have to distribute the minus 6 3 times, so we can do that also 3 times. That's 9 arrows. That means I'm going to have 9 terms right next to each other horizontally. And that's why I left all this space, because we're going to need a lot of horizontal space, okay, to write 9 different things. So if we do that top set of purple arrows, we're going to do 6x squared times 6x squared. That's going to give us 36x to the 4th. Then we're going to do 6x squared times 3x. That's going to give us 18x to the 3rd. Then we're going to do 6x squared times the 4. That's going to give us 24x squared. We're done with the top set of purple arrows. Let's move down to the bottom set of purple arrows. We're going to distribute negative 3x times 6x squared. That's going to give us negative 18x to the 3rd. We're going to distribute the negative 3x times the positive 3x. That's going to give us negative 9x squared. And finally, we're going to distribute the negative 3x to the positive 4. That's going to give us negative 12x. Finally, the green arrows. We have to distribute the negative 6. Remember, everything in the first parentheses getting distributed to everything in the second parenthesis. So when we do the negative 6, we'll have the first green arrow says negative 6 times positive 6x squared. That's negative 36x squared. Then negative 6 times a positive 3x. That's negative 18x. Then negative 6 times a positive 4. That's negative 24. We have finished the distribution. Now we've got to hunt for the like terms. Again, there's 9 terms written here if you count them up. And we got to see which ones are alike. So this is definitely a case where maybe crossing things off can help. Again, you don't have to shape code. Maybe you just want to cross off as you go. So the 36x to the 4th, there are no other x to the 4th terms. So I'm just going to write that, right? 36x to the 4th. And again, maybe you want to cross it off as you go. The positive 18x to the 3rd and the negative 18x to the 3rd. There's no other x to the 3rd. Those actually add up to 0. So we're not going to do anything, right? We never write anything that has a 0 in front. So those actually cancel out. The positive 24x squared and the negative 9x squared, those add up to a positive 15x squared, but we also have negative 36x squared. So we have a positive 15x squared and a negative 36x squared. That's going to make a negative 21x squared. And notice how I'm going in descending order of exponent. I'm always looking for the next lowest exponent and working my way down. So the x squared terms are gone. Now we have a negative 12x and a negative 18x. Those add to negative 30x. And we're done with those. And finally, we have the negative 24 on the end that has nobody to be combined with, so we just write it. So our final answer is 36x to the 4th minus 21x squared minus 30x minus 24. So you have 9 horizontal or terms written horizontally, and you have to look for those like terms and get those combined. Let's do it vertically. Remember, if you do it vertically, you're going to distribute the 6x squared first. When you move down to the negative 3x, you're going to move down. When you move to the negative 6, you're going to move down again. We're going to be working vertically instead. So 6x squared times 6x squared gives me 36x to the 4th. 6x squared times 3x is going to give me a positive 18x to the 3rd. 6x squared times the 4 is going to give me a positive 24x squared. We're going to move down. We're going to do our negative 3x next. We're going to distribute that 3 times, but we're going to move down, and we're going to line up the like terms. So when we do a negative 3x times a negative 6x squared, we're going to get negative 18x to the 3rd, and we're going to line it up under the other x to the 3rd. Then we're going to do negative 3x times positive 3x. That gives us negative 9x squared. Then we're going to do negative 3x times a positive 4. That's negative 12x. Now finally, we're going to distribute the minus 6. I don't know why I like to change colors now because it's too much purple. We're going to distribute the minus 6 3 times. And minus 6 times a 6x squared is going to give me negative 36x squared. Make sure to line it up under the other x squareds. A minus 6 times a positive 3 is going to give me a negative 18x. And a minus 6 times a 4 is going to give me a negative 24. So anytime there's no like terms to be underneath, then it just kind of should have nothing above it or below it. All right? We're done distributing. Notice how we still have 9 terms, but they're just stacked a little differently than when we were working horizontally. And when we do it like this, we add up the columns because the like terms are right under each other instead of across from each other. So as I move down, I see 36x to the 4th, nothing above or below it, so there's no like terms. The positive 18 and the negative 18, then again, that adds to 0, so there is no x to the 3rd term, so we're not going to write anything. Then we have our positive 24 minus 9, which gives us a positive 15, and our negative 36. A positive 15 and a negative 36 gives me a negative 21x squared. In our next column, we have a negative 12 and a negative 18. That gives me negative 30x. And in our last column, we have nothing above or below that 24. So we just write it. So it's your choice. We've really only done 2 examples. It's just we've done them both 2 different ways. Do you like to stack them on top of each other vertically so that the like terms are really easy to identify and also the problem takes less room horizontally? Or do you prefer to just work horizontally and keep them all in a row? It's definitely your choice. But the important thing to remember is that when you have 2 parentheses right next to each other with no symbol in between them, you are finding a product, you are multiplying. And so make sure to distribute everything in the first parenthesis to everything in the second parenthesis.